Welcome to another episode of Life Without Cravings. Today I want to talk about something that I see a lot and that I don't necessarily agree with, and I will tell you why in a sec. But I wanted to talk about this to give those of you who aren't ready to commit to never touch sugar again just a glimmer of hope, because it's doable. So what I want to talk about is the good old all or nothing, or the black and white attitude that we often have when it comes to food addiction. But can a carb addict eat processed food in moderation? And you will hear a lot of arguments for why you can't do this, and people will tell you that a heroin addict can't just have a little bit of heroin every now and then and motivate it that way. But I'm here to tell you that it's completely possible and it's doable. And I believe that anyone can do that. And you can have some processed carbs. I'm not saying that you can have them every day, all the time. But you can live a life where you can actually consume some processed carbohydrates every now and then without risking ending up on a several month or week-long binge after that. It is entirely possible. I have done it. I teach it to all my clients, whether they want to do that or whether they want to be 100% abstinent. They will have the tools so that they can choose for themselves. And I have clients who have successfully done this. So there is no reason why you wouldn't be able to do it. You just don't have the skill yet, and that's okay. You can learn that. So there are a few things that you need in place if you want to do this, and if you want to be successful doing it, so that you can't just mindlessly go and eat some carbs here and there and not really think about what you're doing, because then you're going to go back to your old behavior and keep doing that, because that's what's most familiar to you. So you need to do this from a place of awareness and choice. So there are 4 things that you need in place to be able to do this successfully. Okay? So the first one is that you need the skill and confidence that you can manage your cravings. So this is something that you can learn. It's just like a strategy, something that you need to learn, something that you need to practice, that everyone can do. Then you need to learn to bring awareness to when you are consuming processed carbohydrates, which means that you can't eat mindlessly anymore. You need to pay attention to what's going on. And the third one is that you need to have some very clear basic rules about when you do it, why you want to do it, and how often, how much, etc. And the fourth one is that you need to be committed to becoming the person that eats these foods in moderation. So you need to be very clear on what this looks like for you. And I'm going to go through each of those in a little bit more detail. So the reason that I will argue with anyone who says that you can't do this is because I have done it for several years. It's completely doable. And I know several people who are doing it right now. Okay? I needed to do this because I was not ready to give up sweets completely. So the thought of never tasting, let's say, Ben & Jerry's cookie dough ice cream ever again, that was just terrifying to me. And I know that maybe sounds a little bit silly, but my brain couldn't comprehend of it. There was no way that my brain was going to get on board with the concept of never having anything sweet again. That just wasn't going to happen. My brain would just tell me that my life was going to be awful if I did this to myself. So I personally needed to do it this way. I needed to go to being in control and just having sugar whenever I wanted to, and decide and follow that plan, rather than just saying I'm not going to eat it again, and then if when I've done that, I've fallen off the wagon. Now is a completely different story. But I needed to start here. I needed to do it that way, because when I believed that it was a choice between never having sugar again or continue doing what I was doing, I would never be able to fully commit. I was telling myself that I'm going to do it this time. But my brain couldn't believe that it would make my life better. So if I'm not in that space where I think that my life is actually going to be better if I do this, of course I wasn't going to be successful. Because underneath all of this, my brain is just nagging at me, telling me that it's going to be awful, you're going to feel like shit all the time if you don't have sugar ever again. See, you're not feeling good now, it's really uncomfortable. And of course I would fail. So I would try, but I would try from a place where I was defeated before I even started. So I wasn't prepared to give it up for good. And just knowing that there was another option that could actually work for me, that gave me a little bit of hope. And that's what I'm hoping that this episode will do for you if you're in a similar place. And because when you know that there is a third option, it's not just one thing or the other, there is actually something in between, but everyone keeps telling you that no, you can't do that. But when you realize that actually that is an option, it's so much easier to start making some changes, and changes in the right direction, changes that actually have some positive impact on your life. So not just something that you do 100% for a few days and then it's gone again. These are changes that you can start making straight away and that you might actually carry with you for the rest of your life. Because they don't have that pressure of you never touching anything, processed carbs or sugar or whatever, ever again in your life. So every little change counts, every little change is a positive change in the right direction. And that way, when you start having a little bit of success, you will stay motivated, because when you're seeing that it's actually working, the motivation will come. And you will start believing that it's possible for you to do this. And I'm not going to lie, it is a lot easier to be 100% abstinent. It requires a lot less work to not even consider eating it. That's the truth. But because I was eating it in moderation for so long, for me it was several years, my brain had time to get used to the thought of never having sugar again, or not getting into panic mode whenever I was thinking that that was a possibility for me. And a lot of my time, whenever I was eating anything processed carbs, I spent that time with awareness, which also takes away the fear of eating those carbs, because I realized that eating the carbs doesn't necessarily mean that I will end up binging for several days or weeks or whatever. And often that fear of ending up in a binge is what will motivate people to think that they want to go 100% abstinent, because they are scared of the carbs. But when you have time to prepare and you realize that that's not necessarily going to happen, you can start relaxing about that. So I could actually just have some ice cream one day and then not touch anything for several weeks without any big problems. It required a little bit of work, yes, but it wasn't really that hard to do. And if you can relate to this and you want to learn how to eat in moderation, this is how you do it. The first thing you need to do is to learn to manage your cravings, okay? You don't want to give in to them, like ever. And this is a skill that you learn and then you practice it as much as possible. And if you do this on purpose several times per day, you can actually learn this skill well enough to get control of your cravings within just a couple of weeks. Most people, it takes between maybe 3 and 6 weeks. Some people will take a lot longer. Some people will do it much quicker. But that's in that time frame, most people will learn it. And I have a free training that you can request if you want to learn how to do this, and you can sign up. I'm going to put that on the screen. So you can sign up there on that address. So for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, it's Pim Jansson, PIMJANSSON.com/replay MYC in one word. So that MYC is for Master Your Cravings. That's a training that I had in April this year. And in that training, I will teach you everything that you need to know. Like in the training, I go through literally everything that I teach my clients, everything that you need to be able to learn how to not give in to those cravings that you're going to have. But when you know this, you have all the knowledge that you need to not give in to your cravings. The rest is a different matter. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that again. So I'm going to put that in the show notes as well and in the video description. If you want to click the link, that should be clickable there. But that's the first thing that you need to do. You need to have the tools so that you're able to do it, right? And the next thing is that you need to start bringing awareness to whenever you are eating processed carbohydrates. You can call that mindful eating if you like. Many people do. But the trick here is to remind your brain of what is actually going on, right? So most of the time when we are eating processed carbs, we want to eat as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because our brains will get the biggest pleasure response this way. Excuse me. So the trick is to slow down and use all our senses when we eat the food and really, really taste the food. So that means that maybe if you have a piece of chocolate, you take it, you smell it, you notice the consistency, you might look at it and see how shiny and bright it is or whatever, and then you taste it. And you take one bite at a time. There is no stuffing your mouth full. Excuse me, I should have a drink in here. And you eat slowly. So that's the opposite of what we want to do. So you are actually taking control of the situation. And what you will notice is that the taste is usually changing. Around bite 4 or 5 or so, it doesn't really taste the same as it did on bite 1. It doesn't taste as good anymore. What I find is that it still tastes like, if it's chocolate we're talking about, it still tastes like chocolate, but it tastes very, very just sweet and sugary. It doesn't have any pleasure in the taste anymore. It kind of goes away from me. And around bite 10 or so, most people will have lost this gustatory pleasure response completely. But we still want to eat the food, and that's kind of interesting. So what is happening is that our brains are taking over and they remind us of how good this food is supposed to taste. And then it encourages us to keep eating because we're now chasing that taste that we can't really taste anymore. And we think that if we are stuffing our mouth full with this food, we should taste it much better. And that's why we want to do it. We just want this taste. And at the same time, we're still getting this physiological pleasure reward in the brain. So that reinforces this behavior. And we just want to keep doing it over and over again. And when this shift is happening, when you notice that it goes from not actually tasting so much, or maybe like doesn't add anything else to the taste, but your brain still tells you to keep eating. When this shift is happening, it's always a good idea to stop eating. So there is no more pleasure to be had from this food. That's when you should stop. If you can stop at bite 4 or 5 when it doesn't taste as good anymore, many people find that that's maybe a little bit harder, so it's up to you. But when you definitely don't get any more pleasure from the taste, quit. That's when you quit. And if you can commit to doing this each time you eat processed carbs, you will be quite good at doing it after a while. The first time, it's going to be really uncomfortable because you're not used to doing it. And it won't feel right because your brain telling you to do otherwise. But if you have a plan and you're committed to it, you can do it. And then, the third step, it's time to have a look at why, when, and how often you want to eat processed carbs. And this is very important because you want to bring awareness into every single decision that you make with regards to not eating processed carbs. If you want to eat these foods every day or every other day, you might want to have a look at why you want to do this. It might work for you, but I think that if this is the case, you probably want to have the cake and eat it at the same time. So you aren't really prepared to move forward and stop eating it. So the more often you want to eat the carbs, the more work you will have to do and put into this whole process. So I wouldn't recommend that you do that. Having said that, if that is the only way for you to get started, go for it. Okay? So whatever works for you. That's also important. So my recommendation, however, is that you don't do it more often than once a week. In the beginning, as I said, if you're not quite ready, do what you need to do. But have this as a goal to get to only eating the processed carbs once a week maximum. And just work on getting down to there. Maybe you can start doing it every other day. And then you cut another day out, etc. And the reason I say this is because whenever you are having processed carbs, depending also on how much of it you have, but whenever you do have them, you will mess with your hormones as well. And you will get a physiological craving. So I like to differentiate between physiological cravings and the psychological cravings. This will be a pure physiological craving that will come from your hormones and maybe from your gut bacteria, etc. And you will experience probably more hunger and more stronger cravings, and it will feel more compulsory to eat again after that. So if you keep doing this every day, you have a lot of work to do if you want to actually be able to get through that. And I think it's unnecessary to put yourself through that. You're just making things a lot harder than they need to be. Okay? When I started out, I chose to have something every 2 weeks in the beginning. And if I didn't want something after 2 weeks, I didn't have it. I would just keep going until I wanted something. And then I would plan for it. So this is something I also recommend, that you always plan for it. You never eat in the moment. You never make a decision when the cake is in front of you. You make the decision before you are fronted with the cake. If you're going somewhere and you know that there will be food, you can decide that, okay, I'm going to be eating something tomorrow and I'm going to do it guilt-free and everything is fine. Or you can decide I'm not going to touch it, but know in advance what you're going to do. So I used to go between 2 weeks and sometimes actually 2 months before I had something. It varied very much, but it worked pretty well for me most of the time, and I think that is quite a nice time frame to use. It made the physiological cravings go away completely, which is a bonus, made it easy for me. But you obviously get to go for however long you want to go. It's totally up to you. This is about food freedom, your freedom to choose what you want your eating pattern to be like. I'm not here to tell you that this is how it should look like. I'm only telling you from my experience and from what I see in others what's easiest to do. And I think most of us appreciate easy rather than hard. So that's why I'm saying that. And the last one is that you need to be 100% committed to become a person who eats in moderation. Okay? You will need to spend a little bit of time thinking about what this looks like for you. When you are clear on what it looks like, you can start living this way. So if you imagine what it would be like if you could do this. If you were a person who ate in moderation, what would it look like? So you can ask yourself some questions like, what does this person do when someone brings in pizza at work? What's your response then? What are you going to do? Do you have a plan? What does this person think when she walks past the chocolate aisle in the supermarket? Is it like, I can't have it, I can't have it, I can't have it? Or maybe, okay, no, I don't need chocolate. Maybe it's as simple as that. And that's going to make it a lot easier to walk past. I can tell you that. Or what's motivating this person to keep going when she's on the beach and everyone around her is eating ice cream? What's the motivation behind that? Or how does she feel when someone offers her a donut? Same thing. Is it just like, I'm scared of that donut because I fear that I can't say no? Or is it just like, I know what's best for my body? And then you can feel calm and relaxed in this situation, maybe. And what does she tell her friends when they try to convince her to have just like one piece of cake? Come on, everyone else is having cake. Of course you can have some as well. What do you tell your friends then? And when you can start imagining and visualize how you would think and feel and react as a person who eats in moderation, then you can start living as this person who eats in moderation. But you need to know what that looks like, because if you have never given it a single thought, it's going to be really hard to become that person. So if you want to become a person who can eat in moderation, start with learning how to manage your cravings. Then you move on to bringing just awareness to when you consume processed carbohydrates. When you've done that, you decide on some basic rules around your eating, why you want to continue eating. What's your reason? Do you like that reason? If you don't like the reason, that's not a good reason, then you find another reason for why you want to do it that you can resonate with. For me, the only reason was that I cannot imagine having a life without ice cream ever again. It was this fear of not doing it. Did I like the reason? No, not necessarily like it, but I accepted it and I was okay with it. And I thought, this is a start. This is where I can actually do something about it. And this is as far as I can go in my belief of what I can handle right now. And that worked for me. And once you've done all of that, imagine yourself being that person who eats processed carbs in moderation, following the rules that you have set up for yourself, and then commit to being that person and practice every single day. You don't have to do what this person would do 100% of the time, but if you can bring the awareness again, make a decision every day to do something that this person would do. And think ahead of time. If you know, let's say at work, for example, I knew that every 2 or 3 months, they would either come in with pizza, Thai food, or just, it's like a smorgasbord with lots of stuff, usually crap that I didn't actually like that much, like sausage roll and pies and God knows, or bready sort of carby stuff, and a lot of the time there would be some sort of sweet treats as well. So I knew that this was going to happen, so I just visualized how I'm going to react, how I'm going to think, how I'm going to feel in this situation, and then started living that. Unless it was Thai food, because I love Thai food and it's not that bad, so I would just decide, okay, I'm going to eat as much as I like, which wasn't necessarily enough because everyone liked it and everyone just ate it very quickly. But anyhow, that's just a decision that I made, and then I did it, and I was fine with that. So this is how you learn how to eat processed carbs in moderation if you want to, without ending up binging after that. It's just a skill and it's a deliberate practice. And just one more thing about when you're imagining what it looks like when you are a person who no longer eats mindlessly. Don't start there. It might be tempting because that's something you feel like, oh, well, I just have to take half an hour and sit down and do that, which is fine. You can do that. But if you don't have the foundation, if you don't have the skill, you don't know how to do it, and you don't have any rules around it, it's going to be really hard to do. So then you're just setting yourself up for failure again. So do it in the order that I suggested, and you're pretty much going to be foolproof if you're doing all the steps. And if you want my help to do this, just send me an email. I can actually put it up because I am so clever. I put it up there. So that's my email. It's pim@pimjansson.com. If you want my help, you can just send an email to that email and we can book you in and we can just have a little chat about what it would look like if we were working together.